is Dwight Hopkins, and I'm a professor of theology at the University of Chicago Divinity School. Well, there are a group of religious scholars, pastors, who were thinking about theological education and its relationship to the church in the United States. And one of the things that came up was, well, how can we provide more formal, systematic, and quality theological education to advance African American pastoral leadership, particularly people who are called to pastor churches or be chaplains, or, also be professors, but pastoral leadership. And how things work, the Spirit works in mysterious ways, and the end result is the first African American pastoral leadership program is at a Roman Catholic school. It's not at the historic black schools and colleges. It's not the so-called Research One schools like University of Chicago, Harvard, or Stanford. It is at Oblate School of Theology here in San Antonio. Who would have thunk it? But that's the way the Spirit works. And really, in a nutshell, that's how it began. The idea, conversation among some of us across the country, in Oblate spirit of hospitality, vision for the future, and openness and love toward racial and ethnic diversity. And the lovely location here all brought it together for us. And I was asked to join the Council of Elders, and I said, I'm there. I want to be with this, because this is the future of America, actually. Sankofa is a term that comes from the Akan ethnic group in Ghana, West Africa. And the symbol is a bird whose body is looking forward and the head is turned back. And in many instances of the statue or the symbol, the bird has a ball or a round sphere in its beak, depending on the artist. The basic framework is the forward-lookingness of the body of the bird and then the head turned back. So the bird is looking back to draw on the wisdom, experience, and spirituality tradition of the past of families and other ancestors in order to move that into the forward motion of the body. So the head goes back to grass in order to reconnect with the body. That body could be the physical body of an individual, the body of a community, the body of Christ. And so we have adopted the Sankofa bird for our symbol to talk about what we want to do. And what we want to do, that is the Sankofa Institute for African American Pastoral Leadership, made up of our Council of Elders, or one of which I am, is to try to look forward to enhancing African American pastoral leadership in the 21st century by looking back and drawing on our own history, tradition, and faith for the future. Black theology of liberation is what I do and others. The theology part of the phrase Black theology liberation speaks to us being rooted in the Christian tradition of Jesus the Christ. So that's the theology part. The liberation part is to say the message of Jesus Christ in that tradition is one of liberation and healing for the physically poor and oppressed and for those who are spiritually and emotionally broken. So tradition, theology, liberation, content of the gospel. And part of Black liberation theology answers the question, how does the tradition of theology linked to the word of God of Jesus of liberation reveal itself in Black culture? Hence you have Black liberation theology. Well, I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia, and I was born in the early 50s, and we grew up, Southern Baptist, small s. And so you just went to church. You were involved in stuff for Bible study for kids, but also there was an ethos that church not only just took care of individual soul and family and kids, but it also was involved in social justice. Obviously, the larger context was Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement. They were really that sort of prophetic minority that were pushing forth the prophetic social justice change. But even sort of everyday mainstream Black Baptist churches in the South had to speak for the community when they went downtown. So that's a political thing, which was a lot of risk back in the day, because because a lot of instances the Ku Klux Klan were the mayors, or the city council. So even though it doesn't seem very political or social change now, for those black pastors, and also the other elite for us role models were the black teachers, for them to go downtown to fight for the community was a very, so we grew up in that larger culture of social justice. And then for a period, particularly in the 1960s Black Power movement and Black consciousness movement, it seemed as if, for those of us who were the children of the 60s, that the black church was not involved in cultural identity issues as black people, as people in the African diaspora. And we young people are always impatient, right? So a whole generation of us left the black church to be involved in the community, or student organizations or community organizations, or even some pan-Africanist global networks, right? I was never a big leader. I was just, I would come up and read, and take class, and come to a rally for Africa, South Africa. But I was aware of all that going on. Now, in March of 1969, James H. Cone wrote his first book, Black Theology and Black Power, and he's considered the father of black theology. In that book, he wedded together the social justice part of black power, black identity, and black self-love with the liberation part of Christian theology. And what he did was a whole generation of young black people were brought back to the church as a result of his writing. That's a story that has to be told, because most folk don't realize that. And I'm a witness, and a lot of people in my generation, we have had, anecdotal stories about how, wow, I could be both a supporter of my black African identity that God has created me, and I can also be a supporter of Christianity again. Wow, thank you, Black Theology Liberation. So that's really what it did for us. It's existential. Now, so when I found out that I was actually living 3 blocks from Union Theological Seminary, where James H. Cone was teaching in Manhattan, Harlem, I said, this must be providential. And it was the summer of 1981, and usually faculty, we don't come to our offices, we don't answer the office phone, we just put it like, I'll get back to you when I have time. We may be in town, we're not answering because that's when we write and travel. And I was like, gosh, I know he's not there, right? Because I had to look it up. We had a yellow book back then. So I looked up the yellow book, Union Theological Seminary in New York, James Cone, and called, had his office number. He answered the phone. I couldn't believe it. And he says, yeah, come on up. So about 4 or 5 days later, I walked up the hill and up to past Teachers College, across Broadway, 121st Street, 120th Street, went up to Brown Tower on the 6th floor where his office was, 1981. And he was there. We talked for like 3 or 4 or 5 hours, literally. And then at the end, he says, well, you go downstairs and talk to Reverend Bonnie Roseborough. She's head of the first degree MDiv admissions. You tell her that you are starting the MD program this September. That and the rest is history. Literally, that's how the Spirit works. I could not have planned to end up 3 blocks from Union Theological Seminary, where the father founder of Black Liberation Theology was, in a period of my life where I was trying to link together both black liberation and Jesus liberation. And there he was. Right. I think that I think the young people have outstripped the institutional black church and Black Lives Matter, which I say, amen, right on, power to your system, brother. Sankofa is uniquely positioned to help be a bridge between black church and other churches and faith communities and young people who are leading the Black Lives Matter. Sankofa has a nationwide network from different denominations, different regions, and different cities, and different age groups, different genders, who are already ensconced in various networks, has its roots deeply within the soil in different parts of the garden, if you will, throughout the country, and even globally. We are in different churches as well, not just in the seminaries and theological schools and divinity schools. A lot of us do youth work in the urban areas, whether it's young black men or young black women or both. So the elders and others who are helping and allied with the Sankofa Institute of African American Pastoral Leadership here at Oblate School of Theology, we're organically linked. So depending on what we want to do, Sister Addie can tell you, maybe she's our general. But the main point I want to share is I think that we may be the only loose network, but network nonetheless that is wired in such a way that we could be part of the operationalization of linking churches, particularly black churches, with the young people who are leading the Black Lives Matter movement. In a humble, small way, not a big way, like a whole, Congress or something, but in a small way, a mustard seed way. Sister Addie is the godmother. She's the general. She's the brains behind. She's the woman behind the green curtain. She's actually a deep theologian. She's a spiritualist. She's a friend. She's a black sister and a religious sister. So I call her Sister. And I don't know. She's just. I think God has placed her here on earth at this time in this place for this moment. I don't know anybody like that who combines everything, and I know some people. So I just think that's who she is. She's all of the above. She's a prayer warrior. She's a scholar, confidant. She'll cry with you. She'll travel with you. She'll argue with you. She'll love you. She'll take care of you. I don't know where she comes from. She's just here. She is all of the above. Well, I think we have different generations, different denominations, so already that's a picture of the type of new leaders. They're different denominations, so they'll be comfortable working with other communities of faith, ecclesial bodies, which we need for the 21st century. They're both men and women, and 21st century needs the unleashing of women's, in particular African American women's, full vocational call from God, and also black men being respectful and working in partnership. So that's a new characteristic of the new leadership. They combine both the head and the heart. They are deep thinkers, and we push them too. So they're thinking like scholars, but they're also full with the Spirit. So we have leadership that's both heart and head. That's the characteristic of the 21st century. There are some folks from Africa and Latin America, so we have a formation, the type of characteristics that's being formed in this new generation of student scholars at Sankofa, who will just take international relationship as just breathing. So it's about 5 or 6, different characteristics of who's going to fill those shoes in the 21st century. There's an interesting too. I sense that they have a characteristic where they don't feel a gap between the church and the academy. That's been a big struggle, particularly in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even some up to today about, well, you all black religious scholars got your PhDs and you studied with all these prestigious white institutions, but you lost the fire from the church that your grandmother, you always say grandmother, actually it was my grandfather, that your parents gave you, right? But that debate is a non-issue for the Sankofa student scholars. So they embody already the integrated relationship, non-antagonistic relationship between the academy and the church, which is another important characteristic for the 21st century. On and on. So I'm very pleased with the future that Sankofa has helped facilitating. I would like for us to broaden more globally. In fact, I think, again, Sister Addie is on, she just got back from Ghana. I was like, you're in Ghana? Okay. So already she's doing it, but somehow we need to globalize more and more and institutionalize our relationships to Africa in particular, but also I think we need to do Asia, I think we need to do Latin America, I think we need to do the Pacific Islands, I think we need the Caribbean, and there is a significant small population of black Brits, black French people, black Germans, very small, more blacks in England, but there's a small percentage in France as well as in Germany from the war. And so globally, we can really take this thing on the road, that is to say, how to enhance African American pastoral leadership domestically in a global 21st century. I think we also need to talk more about how to get students ready to govern America. I mentioned in my lecture today on Black Theologies today how the black church and black religious scholars have been good on the prophetic role, prophecy, speaking truth to power. We've been very good, particularly the black church, on the healing role, which is the healer, priest. But there's also the king, how do you govern? And one of the things, I'm working with some black folk in Chicago, South Side, both in the South Side and in some of my classes at the university, to help them learn about lessons from the 60s and 70s, 1950s and 60s civil rights and black power movement. We were good on the prophetic, healing, but we didn't prepare a lot of us in how to govern. You know, after desegregation, after integration, after you get rid of the police chief for killing, you know, after you, maybe they want to get rid of the mayor, that's what they want to do in Chicago. But after all of that, then how would you govern a new America? Not just the black community, but how do you govern America, how do you impact the world? You know, we need, you know, really we need engineers, we need architects, we need all of that. So that's another piece. How do we work with young people to think in terms of governing? And then, to me, that will put in context all the other demands. This is something most people did not do in the 60s. Look at governing and then say, based on, if I have the power to govern, how can I change things to get there? Instead of just focusing on desegregation or integration or getting black studies, all those things. I'm saying not either or, I would say both and, but what was the context and the goal as it linked to those, as the goal was linked to those immediate things. I think we should pass that on, and Sankofa can help us do that. You know, and I think the Bible is important too, in helping us do that. Oh, everybody should come. Yeah, it's Sankofa Institute for African American Pastoral Leadership, which obviously there's somewhat of a lean to African American lay people, people in the ordination process, or pastors, and even some retired people in the church who may not have time to work. So clearly that's part of what the emphasis is, because this is the first such program in the country, and it's also providing, filling a void, because most seminaries, divinity schools, and theological schools are primarily, if not exclusively, and you know, it's people's choice, on the European tradition or white brothers and sisters tradition. So it's not preparing a large part of God's people, which is the black church and the leadership. But it's open to everybody, and it's inviting, it's actually saying that all Americans and folk around the world who want to better appreciate Christianity in general and their vocational call specifically can learn from the black church and leaders of the black church. So it's both and. Emphasizing particularity to African American pastoral leadership, but open to soliciting and welcoming folks domestically and globally, both and. Yeah, I would just invite everyone to come, taste, and see what Sankofa Institute for African American Pastoral Leadership has to offer here at Oblate School of Theology in San Antonio. And I think that another world is possible. We'd like you to be part of that journey with us toward that new world.